Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day, there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I am so excited to talk to my guest today because we're going to be talking about kind of a variety of things, but how we how we should have a coach in business, right? This is something that I believe very strongly in, but there'll be some other things that we're talking about too. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Rebekah Wanic to our program today. Welcome, Rebekah. How are you?
Thank you, Deb. Thank you so much for having me. I'm fabulous. As we just discussed, it's a Friday, so it's always a good day.
I know. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you and then we'll jump into it. So, Dr. Rebekah Wanic is a mindset coach, a university lecturer, and a self optimization expert who has worked with individuals at all stages of their careers to better hone a mindset for success and fulfillment. She holds a Ph.D., MA, and BS in psychology. She is also a certified master life coach, a mindset coach, and transformation coach. So again, Rebekah, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to kind of be able to share
Mm-hmm.
more about what I do to
Mm-hmm.
really help people, like you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
find empowerment and push themselves forward.
I love it. Very cool. Well, I always like to find out from my guests how they got to where they are today. So tell us a little bit more about how you discovered that this is your passion in life.
Yeah, so I started out when I was an undergraduate studying psychology,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like all people that don't know what they want to do when they finish undergrad, they go to graduate school.
Right. You just keep going.
Exactly, because it gives you lots and lots of time to kind of
Mm-hmm.
sort things out. And then when I was in my program, it was very oriented towards training you to be a researcher. So
Okay.
the ideal student in that program was somebody that went on to work at a Research One
Mm.
institution,
Mm-hmm.
grant funding, all those types
Okay.
of things. But for me, that wasn't really fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
What I really found to be fulfilling, I started doing it when I was early in my program, was teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved the teaching because it gave me an opportunity to share what I knew with a wider audience. But also, I started to develop, in the context of teaching, this desire to help push people forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's in part because I had a lot of experiences in my education where I was struggling with things that weren't necessarily
Mm-hmm.
related to the classroom, because I was always kind of a good student,
Mm-hmm.
but I had really great teachers that kind of picked up on some
Mm-hmm.
things that I might need a little bit of assistance on and gave me a little push. And so it's really important for me to feel like what I'm doing has some type of meaningful impact, at
Mm-hmm.
least on a few people. And I think teaching gives you that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started to feel like I wasn't pushing myself
Okay.
enough. And so I started to expand out and look for opportunities to work with people outside of an educational
Mm-hmm.
setting. And that's where the mindset coaching and the self
Mm-hmm.
optimization kind of developed from. Was I also have had a lot of really challenging experiences in
Mm-hmm.
my life from the time that I was very young,
Mm-hmm.
up until I'm still struggling with things now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned a lot about the way that my mindset was holding me
Mm-hmm.
back from feeling fulfilled
Mm-hmm.
and being successful in domains that
Mm-hmm.
mattered to me. And so, when you feel like something has worked for you, you really, at least for me, it's like I feel really inspired to like
Right.
pay
You want to
forward and
share. Mm-hmm.
share it with as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of the impetus for it too, was like, wow, this is so amazing. Look
Mm-hmm.
how much it's helped me.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put myself in a
Mm-hmm.
position to be able to share that with other people as well.
I love that. And I love, and I don't know if it's actually your company name or just what you call it, but vent to reinvent. And I
Yeah.
love that because sometimes we have to kind of get rid of all of that ick and even some of that good stuff, right? In order to reinvent ourselves.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the reason why I created that, I mean, obviously it's a little bit catchy, it rhymes, but
Mm-hmm,
the big piece is that it's okay to be upset. It's okay
mm-hmm,
to need to get stuff off your
mm-hmm.
chest. But if that's all you're doing, then you're just a complainer. You know,
Right.
you're letting yourself stay in that sort
Mm-hmm,
of disempowered victim space.
mm-hmm,
And I'm always like, everything you do, every choice you make should be about figuring out how can I use this to push
mm-hmm,
myself forward. So
mm-hmm,
it's like, yeah, vent, talk about whatever you need to
mm-hmm,
talk about, to cry, scream,
mm-hmm,
whatever. But the purpose of it is, at the end of the day, we're going to figure out how to use
mm-hmm,
that in order to reinvent and push you
mm-hmm,
forward so that you're working towards your own path
mm-hmm.
of optimization.
Right. Do you find, and this is purely anecdotal on my part, that business owners, entrepreneurs, high level people think that they can't complain or they shouldn't complain? So, because they're the boss, they're in charge, they've got the golden life. So why, they have no right to complain. Do you find that? Or is that just purely in my head?
I think there are definitely some people that feel like they don't have space to complain,
Okay.
one, because nobody wants to
Mm-hmm.
listen to
Mm-hmm.
them. But I think oftentimes more of what it is just people not recognizing their power to do something about what they're
Okay.
complaining about.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times people will have the same complaint over and over and over
Mm-hmm.
again. This is what I see a lot with my clients, where it's like, I'm hearing you say the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
that this is an issue that keeps
Mm-hmm.
coming up. So we can talk about it, but we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about it with the goal of figuring out what you need to
Mm-hmm.
do in order to make it so that this isn't
Mm-hmm.
something that keeps coming up.
Right. And it's also, my guess is too, one of those things where they they don't have anyone to vent to,
Absolutely.
right? They don't have, they're not going to vent to someone who reports to them, things like that. And so they keep it all bottled up. And I think we see a lot of issues with that. And we've talked about it on the program before, and I said it at the very start, just how important it is to have a coach, whether it's a life coach, a business coach, a mindset coach. There are a variety of different things. But I tell people and remind them, Tiger Woods has a coach.
Exactly.
We just got done several weeks ago watching the Olympics. um, every single one of those world class athletes had multiple coaches.
Yep.
And I think that is something that people need to remember, is it makes you stronger to say, hey, I need to work with someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think exactly what you were also saying at the beginning when you started to share that great insight was, people oftentimes feel like there isn't a place for them
Mm-hmm,
to share what they need to share.
mm-hmm,
And one of the nice things about selecting a coach is that it's a safer space.
mm-hmm,
You could complain
mm-hmm,
about anybody and anything that you need
mm-hmm,
to, without fear that that's going to
mm-hmm,
somehow come back to hurt you
mm-hmm,
in some other areas of your life. You know, if you need to complain about your relationship partner, your
mm-hmm,
family, your spouse, it's hard to find a good source
mm-hmm.
because you're worried that that information might come back to
Right.
them. If you want to complain about something that's going on in work, again, it's hard to sort of
Mm-hmm.
find the right person to talk to, because either you're talking to somebody at work and you're worried about how it could, again, come
Right.
back.
Yeah, that gets real tricky real fast, from
Exactly.
even from a legal standpoint.
Yeah, exactly. Or you're talking with somebody that doesn't have the insight
Mm-hmm,
into the experience
mm-hmm,
that you're
mm-hmm,
having. So while they're there to be supportive and
mm-hmm,
listen, they are not necessarily trained
mm-hmm,
with the skill set to really
mm-hmm,
identify what the underlying issue
mm-hmm,
is and help you in the best way
mm-hmm.
possible to move forward.
Right. And it is a challenge, because I think everybody needs someone that they can vent, share, whatever it is that we want to call it, the good and the bad, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you feel like if things are really good, you don't have anybody to tell that to either, because it might come off as bragging. It might, all sorts of different things.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So venting, usually we think about it in the negative, that
Mm-hmm,
you're sharing the things that are bothering you.
mm-hmm,
But yeah, absolutely. It's very, very important
mm-hmm,
to have space to sort of share the things
mm-hmm,
that are meaningful in a
mm-hmm,
positive way for you as well.
mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it's always fun when you're looking at LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever, or meeting, whatever it is, and somebody starts saying, hey, this fabulous thing just happened. Because sometimes we're like, oh, well, wow, aren't you a braggart? And so then what happens is they stop sharing.
Yeah.
But I was working with a young woman not long ago who was accepted for a very prestigious program, and she wanted me to promote it for her. And my first thought was, well, la di da. And then, of course, I thought, congratulations, right? And that's one of the things we don't always congratulate other people, but I also thought she had no one who would share that information. And I think that's one of the things that sometimes we forget about too, is it's really lonely at the top.
Yeah, absolutely. And Deb, I'm kind of like you, where if somebody shares something
Mm-hmm,
that's positive with me, I'm always like one of the first people to
mm-hmm,
share it out with
mm-hmm,
everybody, because I agree with you. I don't think that we congratulate people
mm-hmm,
enough, because especially in the world of social media,
mm-hmm.
there's this constant need to try to make yourself look better than
Right.
everyone else that's out there.
Mm-hmm,
And that's viewed in a negative way by a lot
mm-hmm,
of people, but people do it all the time. And so
mm-hmm,
there's this sort of like push and pull
mm-hmm,
of the need to self promote, but
mm-hmm,
feeling like the self promotion is going to potentially come off
mm-hmm,
looking bad for you. And so you do, the more people that you can
mm-hmm,
find that are like your supportive
mm-hmm,
cheerleaders that can share this stuff out on
mm-hmm,
your behalf, the stronger your
mm-hmm,
network is. And then it's,
mm-hmm,
reciprocal. So you share their stuff, and then
mm-hmm.
hopefully they'll be able to share and support you as
Right.
well.
Right. Well, and let's be honest, I think women don't share. We don't say we did it as in I. We make it we, the team, all of those various things. But it is very tricky for women, because sometimes we come across not only as just braggart, but there's that other B word that can pop up. And and at least my generation, we were taught that's not polite, that's not ladylike, you don't do that. Now luckily I had a mom that said, you go out and you tell those people. But yeah, we really were told, no, 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 that's not ladylike.
Yeah, Deb, that's a great point too, because there's actually a lot of research evidence that shows that when women self-promote, people respond to it more negatively
Mm-hmm,
than when men self-promote.
mm-hmm,
And it's part of what comes up in the leadership literature a lot, in
mm-hmm,
that because men are given more license to
mm-hmm,
sort of do the braggarty kinds of
mm-hmm,
things, they're also more likely to then be put in positions of leadership.
mm-hmm.
So it's sort of like this two-way street, where
Right.
women are less likely to do it,
Mm-hmm,
in part because they know when they do
mm-hmm,
it, it's viewed in a more negative light. And
mm-hmm,
so being in a space where, we can celebrate the
mm-hmm,
accomplishments of other women is
mm-hmm,
important. But there's also that piece of what sometimes it's called queen bee syndrome,
mm-hmm,
where because it's hard for women to establish themselves in positions of leadership,
mm-hmm.
there's a sort of jealousy component where other women don't
Mm-hmm.
want to necessarily be
Right.
their cheerleaders. And so it is, to a certain
Mm-hmm,
extent, it for some aspects
mm-hmm,
of being a person who's highly successful,
mm-hmm,
more challenging to
mm-hmm,
navigate the social space for women,
mm-hmm.
for sure.
Right. And it's funny when you said queen bee, my mind went to another queen bee, obviously Beyonce, right? Who does not hesitate to let the world know she is queen bee. But
Mhm.
she does it in a way that I don't think anybody ever goes, ew, right? You're like, well, yeah. I mean, and we see that with, say, Taylor Swift. There are certainly lots of others. I think of the Kardashians and go, ooh. Now maybe it's just because I don't like the Kardashians, but yeah, there is kind of that fine line for women on how to promote ourselves. And you're so right. If women want those promotions, we've got to make sure, or that job, that contract, whatever it is, we've got to make sure people know that we are fabulous to work with and we darn well deserve it.
Right, right. And that can be hard, because there's also some bias in evaluating the quality of the work product that
Mm-hmm,
comes from women
mm-hmm,
compared to coming from men. So
mm-hmm.
a lot of this stuff I actually teach, because I teach a psychology of gender course.
Ah,
Um, And so these are topics that come up. And so it's not to say, I feel like when I talk to my students, I say like, the picture is not so bleak that you're a woman out there in the work world and nobody's ever going to acknowledge you and nobody's ever going to recognize your worth. It's just there are certain social dynamics that women need to be a little bit more sensitive to. And fortunately, the research evidence suggests that things are changing.
Yes.
There's a lot of, programming designed to get people to recognize when they might not be evaluating people using the equivalent standards. And there's lots of programming out there to promote and facilitate women achieving higher level positions within organizations. So the general message is, things are moving in the right direction, but it doesn't mean that those challenges aren't there.
Right. And as you said, we as women in general have got to support other women. And so when we see something, whether it's LinkedIn, social media, whatever it is, and we know that that woman needs bragged about, brag about that woman. That's perfectly fine.
Exactly. Yep. Share it as much as you can. Absolutely.
Right. And we have to, it's funny. We don't always expect more from ourselves. And I say that, I just mentioned the Olympics, and there was one of the U.S. gymnasts, one of the female gymnasts, who they were talking about the fact that she journaled a lot. And, this was not Simone or any of the, it was, but, and they showed a page from her journal. The announcers thought this was fabulous. I was mortified. What she had written down was, I am average. And I thought, oh no, honey, you are an Olympian. You need to own that. And and they it was just really strange that everybody thought that was okay. And and it was funny because I was trying to find it before we went on, because like I said, I don't remember which Olympian it was, but I'm sorry, I don't want to be average, and I don't want to work with somebody who's average.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing to bring up, Deb, because I wonder if the response to that being written in a journal might have been different if it was from a Simone Biles, for
Right.
example. Because all you ever hear the announcer saying when she's on is like, she's the greatest
Yeah,
ever.
she's the GOAT.
She's the greatest ever. Which, like, I have a huge problem with, because with people saying that about
we got a lot of goats now. Let's just be honest.
Literally every athlete that is excelling right now, the announcers are calling
Right.
it totally meaningless term. But I think that I agree with you that there's no way that somebody that is an Olympic athlete is average. But I think what that speaks to is this need to sort of balance your self-assessment so that you're not so, self-conceited that you think that you've got everything sorted out. But you recognize that when you have, certain skills and abilities that are above the rest of the pack. But there's also a lot of evidence that women compared to men view their position, in on whatever the dimension is that they're evaluating themselves, they tend to view themselves lower than where they actually are. Whereas men tend to view themselves slightly higher than where they actually are. So in working with clients, a lot of times what I help them do is, like, we talk a lot about self-awareness and self-reflection and knowing where you are relative to where you want to be. Because sometimes it's perfectly fine for you to be average and want to stay average.
Right.
Sometimes it's fine to be mediocre and want to stay mediocre.
Some people do not want to be a boss. They do, and that's wonderful.
Exactly. But the more that you know that, and the more that you know sort of where your core values are in terms of where you would like to demonstrate improvement, the better able you are to then address and adjust your efforts so that you can start taking steps in those domains that matter to you. Because I think a lot of us get stuck because we get messages from other people about what we should be focusing on and what we should be working on. Oh, you're so good at this. Why wouldn't you put more effort into it? And you're sitting there thinking, because I don't care about it.
Yeah, I don't like it.
I'm glad that you think that it's fantastic, but to me, it's not important. And I think sometimes it takes somebody giving you encouragement to help you realize that you can say, no, that doesn't work for me. That's not the thing that I want to excel in. I want to excel over here. But being able to do that requires accurate self-knowledge about where you are and what you need to be doing.
Right. And men and women get pushed into things that
Of
they
course.
really didn't want to do, but they felt they needed to. And I've talked with several on this podcast where they said, yeah, we have this degree in this, didn't like it. But mom and dad thought I should get that. Or, the coach and whoever. And it is that self-awareness. And for some people, you know, planting flowers and just hanging out all day in a garden, that makes their souls sing. For others, it's being the top of the business world, right? And so it really is just knowing what is best for you.
Right. And also, I think a related piece to that is understanding why it matters
Mm-hmm,
to you. Because sometimes the drive is still, even if you feel driven to do it, it's still coming from an external
mm-hmm,
source. And that tends to leave people less fulfilled. So it's like
mm-hmm,
they're achieving,
mm-hmm,
but it's not an achievement that's ever going to help them to feel
mm-hmm,
satisfied, because the reason why they're pushing is not necessarily something associated with what
mm-hmm,
it is that they value. And I
mm-hmm,
think a lot of times it's hard for people to sort of let go
mm-hmm,
of the thing that's driving them
mm-hmm,
and realize that I might need to reorient.
mm-hmm,
And that reorientation is going to take some time. It's going to take
mm-hmm,
some effort. It's going to be a little bit unpleasant.
mm-hmm,
So, one of the things that I also work with clients on too is don't run away from something that feels uncomfortable.
mm-hmm.
If it feels uncomfortable, it's because you're being alerted to the fact
Right.
that there's something that you need to pay attention
Mm-hmm.
to.
It's kind of like pain.
Right.
Pain is there for a reason.
Exactly, exactly. But we're so used to getting these messages. So one of the
Mm-hmm,
things I talk about a lot is like I'm very against the current self-care culture, because the kind of self-care that it cultivates is not actually going to help you to get better.
mm-hmm,
It's about that immediate comfort, the
mm-hmm,
immediate ease.
mm-hmm,
And that's not typically going to do
mm-hmm.
anything of value for you. I mean,
Right.
of course, sometimes we need to relax, we need to chill.
Mm-hmm,
I'm not saying that that doesn't have its
mm-hmm,
place, but if every time you feel discomfort, you run for ease, you're
mm-hmm.
selling yourself short. You're
Right.
ignoring all of the key pieces of
Mm-hmm,
information that, hey, something's not right. And this
mm-hmm,
is where you need to kind of dig in a little bit
mm-hmm,
deeper, push through some of that
mm-hmm.
pain so that you can generate some of those self insights that
Right.
are really going to help you to
Mm-hmm,
make the changes you need to push you on the path
mm-hmm.
of fulfillment.
Right. Well, and people don't want to fail, or not be successful or all of those things. So then it's easier to just not do it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You know what? It is so funny. So I always tell people, like, the best thing somebody could tell me to motivate me is that I can't do it. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, I can't.
Yeah. Oh
Oh, I,
no.
and so I actually just like, oh, sorry, small shameless self-promotion. I just published my first novella,
Woo!
and like part of the reason
And wait a
for
minute. No, we're going to back up here because we just talked about this. We are going to celebrate the fact that you just published your first novella. So
Thank you.
yay!
Thank you.
Okay.
It's super exciting for me. It really has nothing to do with, my
Right.
general
Mm-hmm.
career stuff, other than the themes that the novella explores
Mm-hmm.
are things that I work with clients, like
Mm-hmm.
self-discovery, judgment, etc.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I've actually written a bunch of different fiction
Mm-hmm.
pieces. I just never submitted anything
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing. I've never taken
Mm-hmm.
any
It's
lessons
not
in.
good enough.
Yeah, and so then I was talking to somebody and they said like, yeah, you're right. It's really hard to get a book published.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so funny because like as soon as I heard that, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, watch me.
Yeah. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. Hold my
And I
beer.
know that I'm lucky, it's
Mm-hmm.
like I don't think I did it. I did all of it on my own, obviously, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
that was the motivation that I
Mm-hmm.
needed, was somebody just telling me like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you're gonna be able to do it. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, no, I'm pretty sure I will.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And just watch because I'll do it more than once.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's funny because a lot of times we do need that kind of kick in the what's to
Yeah.
get us going. And it was I earlier today, I record these podcasts in advance, and so sometimes they're out of order, and the one I did earlier today was our 1000th episode, and
Amazing.
the guest was
That is
talking about
amazing.
the fact that when his daughter was in high school playing soccer, she was very good and was looking at various colleges, and she told her coach, here is where I want to go, and the coach said, oh, they won't take you. guess where she went.
That is
Right.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah.
And I think it is that sometimes. No, you can't get that contract. You can't win that award. You can't do that. And we really do think, yeah, right, hold my beer.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think that's another reason why having a coach is valuable,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times people they don't have the strength on their own to
Mm-hmm.
say, you know what, I'll show you. But
Mm-hmm.
they know that they can. They
Right.
just need somebody to provide
Mm-hmm.
them with some extra
Mm-hmm.
support. You know, like I'm fortunate. I have a lot of supportive people in my life that help
Mm-hmm.
me when I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna walk out on this ledge and see what happens,
Mm-hmm.
and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, do it. You know, it's just there will always be those people around you that are going to tell you that you can't.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like and speaking about mindset, if you just tweak your mindset, so when you hear those messages, they're not damaging to you,
Mm-hmm.
they're motivating to you. I think that's kind of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the best way to orient.
Right. Right. And way back when I was in high school, I am at the end of the baby boomer generation, probably old enough. In fact, I know I am to be your mother. Um, and but I had, teachers, guidance counselors, people like that that said you can't do whatever it was. Now, for whatever reason, when I was young, I decided I wanted to be an attorney, partially
Mhm.
because I like to argue, right? But I had people who said, you can't do that. Girls don't do that. Girls can't do math. Girls can't do, and I very distinctly remember thinking, yeah, right, no. And I did go to school for political science and did that for several years and then thought, bleh. And just really thought I know. And part of it was really funny because part of it was I thought, well, I don't want to getting a law degree. That's a lot of time and a lot of effort. I ended up with 2 master's degrees, which would be even more. But it was one of those things where the second I was told no, I was even more determined to show them wrong.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's hard to get to that point where you can use that as a motivational tool,
Mm-hmm,
because I think a lot of us feel insecure about our own skills and
mm-hmm,
abilities. We don't oftentimes
mm-hmm,
recognize all of the support
mm-hmm,
that we have in place.
mm-hmm,
And so I think part of like the
mm-hmm,
self-awareness that I work with clients on is like it's awareness of you plus your
mm-hmm.
environment. And so
Right.
where you can go to
Mm-hmm,
seek support and assistance
mm-hmm,
when you need it. And sometimes we need a little bit of help,
mm-hmm,
other people sort of pointing us in the right
mm-hmm.
direction.
Right. And obviously, we're not saying, go out and tell people they can't do stuff. It is
Right.
much better if you are supportive and helpful, and things like that. Otherwise I'd be telling my husband, oh, you cannot load that dishwasher. And he would go, yeah, right. No. And he wouldn't load the dishwasher. But, so we do need to be supportive, but sometimes that reverse psychology does have its place.
Yes, for sure. And the other thing I just want to kind of touch on too, because I think sometimes this gets misunderstood, is it's also important that you seek out feedback from others that helps you understand
Mm-hmm,
the domains that you're continuing to put effort in that you
mm-hmm,
might not be
mm-hmm.
successful at. So like I
Right.
always joke about like when I was a kid, I really want to be Michael Jordan. I have
Mm-hmm.
zero basketball ability whatsoever.
I don't know how tall you are.
I just I'm not cut out for it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I was like the person who you'd throw the ball to me and I would not catch it. It would like hit me
Oh
in the
no, it get you in the nose. Oh
the
no. Mm-hmm.
bloody nose and stuff like that. So, but my dad put in a basketball hoop out
Mm-hmm.
in the, you know, by our
Mm-hmm.
driveway. I'm practicing and stuff, but it's like, you know, and obviously my parents were like, you could be Michael Jordan, Rebecca.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of let me play with it for a
Mm-hmm.
little bit until I
Right.
came to realization on my own.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times where you see people that they have so much talent,
Mm-hmm.
but they're for whatever reason like really stuck on this
Mm-hmm.
is the only way that I
Right.
get to what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And so being in a position where you have support, and I think
Mm-hmm.
coaching is really valuable for this,
Mm-hmm.
where somebody can say like, you've been working on this
Mm-hmm.
for 5 years using the
Right.
same strategy,
Mm-hmm.
but it, you know, there be another way that
Mm-hmm.
you could go about doing this,
Mm-hmm.
or might your efforts be more usefully directed
Right.
towards another type of
Mm-hmm.
path. So there's kind of like this balance,
Mm-hmm.
because I think sometimes we feel like if we give that kind of critical feedback to
Mm-hmm.
people, then we are the people that are
Mm-hmm.
saying you can't do it.
Right.
But there's a way of sort of
Mm-hmm.
helping people to understand that I'm not saying you can't. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just saying that there might be other things that you can
Right.
do
You're
that are
really organized. What if you did it this
right,
instead,
right,
or something like that?
exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Right. Well, and of course it's difficult, especially if we have been putting a lot of blood, sweat, tears, time, money into something, and
Yeah,
it's either not our passion or not working. Because you really, back to, we hate to admit that we were wrong. We don't want to admit failure, but maybe it's not that we're admitting failure. We should be learning from all of that. And maybe it was that we learned, no, I am not cut out. My parents, especially my mother, believed that little girls should play sports for teamwork, all those various. Oh, I trip over lines. I mean, I am so not a graceful child, but she made me do it. And did I get a lot out of it? Yes. There were all sorts of things, but there were times where it was also incredibly frustrating because I would think, instead of doing this, I could be doing this.
mhm,
But I learned from it, right? I learned that I wasn't good at sports, you know, and,
yeah.
and but yeah, it is a challenge when we're just not sure what we're good at, and we put a lot of time into it. So, how dare we quit?
Yeah, it's kind of like that sunk cost
Mm-hmm.
fallacy that
Right.
they talk
Mm-hmm.
about with houses,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like
Right. Mm-hmm.
sometimes continuing to dump money into this is
Mm-hmm.
it's a lost
Mm-hmm.
endeavor, and so you're better off
Mm-hmm.
cutting and running.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's also kind of a challenge because we tend to sort of look down on people that quit. That
Mm-hmm.
am I giving up on my
Right.
dreams if I sort of
Quitters never prosper and
right,
all those
right?
various things. Mm-hmm.
But it's like the best choice is going to be knowing when it's
Mm-hmm.
time for you to get out
Mm-hmm.
and when the extra effort is
Mm-hmm.
likely to manifest itself
Right.
in big returns. And
Mm-hmm.
so, again, you need guidance from other
Mm-hmm.
people in order to be able to
Mm-hmm.
help identify those particular
Right.
factors.
Right. And obviously we're talking about the importance of coaching, but mastermind groups are another place, as long as it's a good mastermind group. I've been part of some that was nice. We had fun getting together. It was, they were, and some of it was really fun. They were cheerleaders no matter what. And there were times where you needed to hear some of those
Right.
negatives. And I'm actually part of two mastermind groups now where they'll tell you, no, and they would say, saying this with love, and they actually are, and so that's
Yeah.
okay. But there really are times where you need to be told no.
Yep.
And hearing that from somebody who is unbiased, whether it's other people in a mastermind group or a coach, that's where it is so valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. There, one of my favorite Thomas Sowell quotes is that somebody that cares about themselves tells you what you want to hear.
Mhm.
Somebody that cares about you tells you the truth.
Yes.
And it's like once you carry that with you,
Mhm.
then you become significantly less defensive
Mhm.
when somebody is giving you constructive and
Right.
critical feedback.
Mhm.
You're like, you know what? This person cares about me, so they're
Mhm.
sharing this.
Mhm.
It doesn't feel pleasant when I'm getting
Right.
the
And
feedback.
I might not do what they're saying,
Exactly,
but
exactly. But I'm gonna own that unpleasantness
Mhm.
as something about me. It's not
Mhm.
something about them. They're coming from a place of care.
Mhm.
And then you have the power, like you're saying, to
Mhm.
choose what you want to do with
Mhm.
it. But I think so many people just instantly get defensive when somebody gives them some type of
Mhm.
critique that they're not in a space where they're
Mhm.
opening themselves up to
Right.
actually making it useful.
Mhm. Mhm. Right. And then you have that other little thing called ego, right? And
Not so
so
little.
many leaders, I mean, the Elon Musk just sprung to mind, right? And where their ego is so overinflated that they can't see anything. And so how do you work with people to get them to see, hey, you've got this great people around you, you're not the king of the world or queen of the world. How do you really work with people to kind of get them to back that ego off? Now, I realize the very first thing is they have to want help, right?
Right.
You can't, but, say they've come to you and said, Rebekah, it's not going the way it should. I need help.
Yeah, I mean, usually, so I feel pretty fortunate because I have a good sense of humor that oftentimes helps people to not
Mm-hmm,
feel so defensive when
mm-hmm,
I'm saying things because I could say it in a
mm-hmm,
context where we can laugh about it.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But when I work with clients, I tell them you're going to hear me say a lot that sounds like a you issue.
mm-hmm,
And what I mean by that is you're talking about it as if this is something that's happening to you or this is something that other people are doing. But
mm-hmm,
what I'm hearing, what I'm recognizing
mm-hmm,
is it's a you issue.
mm-hmm,
And you become so much more powerful when you can start to recognize, oh, this is a me issue,
mm-hmm,
because then you can control your
mm-hmm,
response and you can make the
mm-hmm,
changes that you need to make
mm-hmm,
in order to put yourself in a better position. And
mm-hmm,
so if ego is preventing you from hearing the feedback of the other individuals that you're working with, if ego
mm-hmm,
is preventing you from sort of like switching paths because you feel like you
mm-hmm,
have to be right all of the time,
mm-hmm,
I will call out that that's a you issue. Like
mm-hmm,
you might need to go sit in the corner because like you're not putting yourself in
mm-hmm,
the best position to be
mm-hmm,
open to learning about the
mm-hmm,
situation. And depending on who the person is, sometimes it takes a while to sort
mm-hmm,
of break through and break that down. And sometimes people will get upset at being challenged. And I also, kind of start off coaching by telling clients like when you get defensive, what you need to do is sit with it and you
mm-hmm,
need to think long and hard in a self-reflective state
mm-hmm.
about why you are
Right.
getting defensive,
Mm-hmm.
because you being defensive is not about
But
you,
they're
it's about
picking
something
on
different from you.
me.
Right, right. And I think like over time, people start to realize that having that mindset where you're sort of constantly looking at
Mm-hmm.
how am I causing this
Mm-hmm.
thing to be a bother to me? What am
Right.
I doing to
Mm-hmm.
contribute to this situation? It's not that you're becoming more egocentric. It's actually you're becoming less egocentric because you're opening yourself up
Mm-hmm.
to the self-critique. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's so important because so many people
Mm-hmm.
have so many mechanisms operating to
Mm-hmm.
prevent themselves from engaging in any self-critique.
Right. Yeah, because we're protecting ourselves.
Right.
And which is, obviously very natural,
Yeah.
and but it is, we have to be able to accept that outside input in order for us and everyone to get better.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so because it's not at the end of the day just about you. You being more optimal,
Mm-hmm.
working to be more successful and
Mm-hmm.
fulfilled typically involves your interactions with
Mm-hmm.
other people, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's at work, in relationships, other aspects of
Mm-hmm.
family dynamics, friendships, whatever. There Humans are oriented such that fulfillment is derived in part from our interactions with others.
Right.
And the more that you know about and understand yourself, the
Mm-hmm.
better you are in your interactions with
Mm-hmm.
other people. And I think like this is one of the things that oftentimes is a struggle with parenting,
Mm-hmm.
is that so many people are very defensive about parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you try to help them to make adjustments to the way that they might
Mm-hmm.
be interacting with or responding to their kids,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so meaningful, it's
Mm-hmm.
something that they feel really, really defensive about.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
so but again, the more that you can practice in all of the
Mm-hmm.
domains, kind of setting aside that defensiveness
Mm-hmm.
and then thinking about why am I getting so bothered by
Mm-hmm.
this? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's usually because it's
Yeah, you're realizing, oh, they're true.
exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
It's pointing out something that you would rather not confront,
Mm-hmm.
but that you probably need to
Right.
at some point.
Right. And it is tough when you are the business owner, the entrepreneur, because we think that everybody thinks we must have every answer. We can't ask for help, all of those things. And so that's where it is hard to, and it's funny, we talk about this on this program a lot. We wouldn't try and do open heart surgery on ourselves, but why do we think that we have to know tax code or or do our own invoicing, or all of those various things to be successful? And now the success is defined by each person, and so, but we really need to have the other people helping us and surrounding us and supporting us.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that you were kind of reminding me of was, I think, so I spent some time working as the mindset coach for this company that was teaching people how to sell on Amazon. So they were
Hmm.
all, trying to be new
Okay.
entrepreneurs. And
Hmm.
one of the things that I would do was we had weekly calls. I would bring in guests, and the guests were people that had very successful
Hmm.
online businesses.
Hmm.
Every single one of them talked about epic failures that they
Hmm.
had experienced.
Right.
But when we're looking at, people who are successful, we're looking at them at the time when they're successful. And we
Hmm.
oftentimes don't recognize that they went through a bunch of struggles and
Hmm.
stuff as well.
Hmm.
Jeff Bezos was working out of his parents' garage
Hmm.
at some point, and
Right.
so it's like, and obviously not everybody is going to have that level of astounding
Hmm.
success, but if you're not open to the fact that, like, you might need to change paths,
Hmm.
everything is not going to be sunshine and roses for
Hmm.
you all the time, then you're not going to be in a position to sort of cultivate the skills that
Hmm.
you need to get through those challenging
Hmm.
times. It's going to make you much more likely to quit, not be open to
Hmm.
feedback. And that's one of the things that I try to instill in clients as well, is like, be grateful for all of the
Hmm.
challenges that life has thrown your
Hmm.
way. I said you can't always do it right at the time when it's
Right.
happening,
Hmm.
but if you stay bitter and
Hmm.
upset about a challenge, it's stunting your growth.
Hmm.
Like lots of things I've experienced health wise that I have zero control over, that have
Hmm.
made just like existing
Hmm.
endlessly difficult.
Hmm.
But I sit there and I think to myself, you know what? I've gotten through it.
Hmm.
And the nice thing about that is the next new thing, because there'll always be a new thing, the next new thing that comes, I'm so ready for it.
Hmm.
It's not going to be able to knock me off my
Hmm.
feet. And it takes some time, right? The
Hmm.
first big struggle, it usually takes people a lot to sort of
Hmm.
get to a point where they can overcome it. And then you reach out for help, you
Hmm.
get assistance where you need it. But after you get through, look back and be grateful,
Hmm.
because it made you that much stronger,
Right.
that much more
Hmm.
capable. And I think in business, it's the same kind of
Hmm.
thing. When you're going through it, like I always say, like, first you survive,
Hmm.
then thrive, right?
Right.
So it's like sometimes
And
we
and
just
we're
get
not saying you want to go, "Ooh, I'll do that again."
right,
No.
exactly. Don't totally go, make bad decisions so that you have to deal with the
Hmm.
challenge. But also, like we were talking about earlier, in terms of like knowing where your strengths and your
Hmm.
weaknesses are, trying out new things and learning that that's not for you is a
Hmm.
good way of helping yourself to
Hmm.
navigate challenge as well,
Hmm.
because you can confront some of like the feelings of
Hmm.
disappointment, frustration, etc.,
Hmm.
in a space that might be a little bit more safe.
Hmm.
You take those skills with you
Hmm.
into the other domains where success for you might be
Hmm.
more potentially important.
Right. Right. Yeah, I've had health challenges too, and people have said to me, "Oh my gosh, you seem to really be thriving because of it." Yeah, I've had to. I mean, right? There really wasn't any other choice. I could have curled up in a little bump and said I'm not going on. Would I go through it all again? No. I mean, I'm up to 34 surgeries and 3 cancers and
Wow.
bleh. But I also know, and I am very proud of who I am today because of all of that.
Yep.
And, let's see, I was diagnosed in 2015. In 2014, I had absolutely no idea that any of that was coming. And and would I go back to that? No, no. Again, I wouldn't repeat it.
Right.
But yeah, it's we and you said the word several times. It's a choice. It is our choice on how we deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with you. Being grateful is not about saying I want to do this again.
Hmm.
Being grateful is about acknowledging what that experience
Hmm.
did to further your
Hmm.
personal growth. If you made the choices to grow from it.
Hmm.
But,
Hmm.
unfortunately, lots of people choose the path of victimhood, where they
Hmm.
sort of like let the disadvantage
Hmm.
overtake them.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's sad, because that's so disempowering, because it's like you are so much more
Hmm.
than the negative experience that
Hmm.
you're trying to navigate.
Hmm.
Try, like, feel pity for yourself for a small
Right.
amount of time, but don't get
Hmm.
stuck there.
Hmm.
I say a lot something very similar. I always say, like, I don't wish my experiences on anybody, but I'm
Hmm.
so happy I had them, because they made me the
Hmm.
person that I am
Right.
today.
Hmm. Yeah. And again, it's all about mindset. But I do have to, kind of think, okay, mindset starts when we're itty bitty, right? I'm an only child, and I laugh that means I don't know how to share. And spoiled. I mean, there are a lot of things that go along with being an only child, but I always have to stop and think, okay, I can have other delegating for me is hard. Oh my gosh, it's really hard. And I have people who continually remind me to delegate, and God bless them, right? But yeah, I was used to being spoiled, doing it myself, all of those things. And so getting into that mindset of abundance and being able to accept help is sometimes, I always have to stop and think, and part of it is I always have to stop and think, you don't have to be the one who volunteers or the one who does it. And that's always, kind of a challenge, especially for a lot of business owners. They're like, no, I have to be the one who does this.
Yeah, definitely. I think part of the um problems with the delegating, because I know a
Mhm.
lot of high functioning people have that as an issue, because you know that you're going to do it up to your standard,
Right.
and
And
it's
it's
not
the
the
only
case.
way to do it.
Right, and it's not the case that everybody else is. I was literally just having this conversation with somebody yesterday, because they were frustrated,
Mhm.
like, all of these things are really easy and this
Mhm.
person isn't following through on them. I
Mhm.
said, you have to remember that it's easy for you because
Yes.
you're so competent,
Mhm.
but not everybody is as gifted.
Mhm.
And so if you can just remind yourself of
Mhm.
that and have a little compassion for
Mhm.
them, that maybe they're 80% of your
Mhm.
performance is the best that they can do.
Mhm.
And then think about, given that you know that this is a
Mhm.
struggle for them, what are some things that maybe you could tweak about the
Right. What can you do
situation?
to help? Mhm.
Right, right.
Mhm.
And it's I made a point of saying, I'm not trying to invalidate your complaint, because
Right.
yes,
Mhm.
it's frustrating, but
Mhm.
also part of working with other
Mhm.
people is recognizing that sometimes there are those
Mhm.
frustrations, because the way that you work and the
Mhm.
way that other people work
Right.
isn't exactly going to be the
Mhm.
same.
Right. And I do have to remind myself, somebody doing it different does not mean they're doing it wrong.
Right.
And the blow to my ego is when I realize they're doing it better. Right?
Yeah, and that's a good kind of mindset tweak too, is think to yourself, like, they're not doing it the way that I want them to do it. It
Mhm.
may be a failure, but it may be better, and I'll
Mhm.
learn something from them.
Mhm. Right. And like this program, great example. We have I have a fabulous producer. I've worked with Kim 4 or 5 years. We keep losing track. And I used to do what she does, working with my guests, coordinating schedules, doing the social media. And then it finally dawned on me that's not the best use of my time.
Mhm.
And so, I hired Kim, and she does it so much better. And what I did was I said, here's how I have done it. Now take it and make it yours.
Mhm.
And that was the important thing, was I didn't want her, she didn't have to just start from scratch. It's like, okay, here's the emails that I send out and things like that. But it was, here's kind of something to start with, but then make it yours.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right that it's hard for a lot of people to do that. But if you trust that other people, if given the space to sort of make it theirs, will
Mhm.
do it in a way that is most functional for
Mhm.
them, and you can kind of, give up some of the
Mhm.
control, it oftentimes
Mhm.
frees you up, like you're
Mhm.
saying, that's not the best use of your
Mhm.
time. So you can focus on other things that might be
Right.
more important or
Mhm.
require more of your attention.
Right. And of course, it's a little bit tricky when we have been doing it all and we have trained everybody that we're going to do it all. And then we say, no, you get to do it. And because then they're waiting. They're either waiting for us to jump back in and take over, which no, 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 don't do that. Even though you might want to. But, somebody told me, they said, we have great people who we are surrounding ourselves with, who we are working with. We need to honor them by giving them the grace to do it.
Mhm.
And it's funny because I, had this conversation with somebody the other day. They didn't do something, and they said, "Well, we thought you were going to do it." And I said, "No, I delegated it to you." And she said, "Yeah, but I thought you were going to do it." Because in the past, I probably would have,
Right.
at least put in my 2 cents worth, right? And so it's kind of getting everybody used to the fact that you're smart, you're capable, you're going to do it. And if something doesn't go quite the way that we thought it would, well, maybe it is better, right? Or maybe it's something we need to fix, but it's going to be okay.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think that that is such a challenge, and I think, when you think about people who sort of like they move up the ladder
Mhm,
at work and they go from, regular employee status to management status,
mhm.
most companies do a relatively ineffective job of
Oh,
training
they don't give you any training.
managers. And a lot of the stuff that organizations
Mhm,
use is not research
mhm,
based. And so that creates potential problems where people don't even
mhm,
have the tools that they
mhm,
need to acquire the skills in
mhm,
order to be better in
mhm,
the positions of leadership that they find
mhm,
themselves in. And so that obviously organizations can work on improving what they provide, but
mhm,
that's another thing where if you're in a new position, seeking out coaching
mhm.
is really valuable because
Right.
it's another source of
Mhm,
information
mhm,
about focusing you
mhm.
on some of the potential things that you
Right.
can or should be doing
Mhm,
to help make that
mhm,
transition to the leadership
mhm.
position much more
Right.
effective.
Right. And let's be honest, you might have to do it on your own. And you might not want to tell them that you've had to do that because they might think, ooh, maybe we shouldn't have promoted her. But if you need outside assistance, you need outside assistance. You
Right.
might a lot of times, obviously, having a mentor is good in the company, but sometimes you do need somebody completely out and unbiased.
Yeah, and I think mentorship can be great, but one of the problems with mentorship is mentors aren't often trained in how to
Right.
be
They're
effective
they're
mentors.
a lot of times they're your buddy.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly, exactly.
Let's go have a glass
Or
of
it's like,
wine. It's
you
Friday.
yeah, you have like the right there's like the mentor that's just kind of like, that I call them like the work grandparent, where
Mhm,
they're just there to like chill with you, or you have the mentor that's like super serious about it in a way
mhm,
that's also not helpful because they're
mhm.
mostly just kind of trying to like mold you into a mini
Yeah, they
you.
want you to be a mini me.
Yeah.
Mhm. Right. And it's one thing to maybe say, okay, you've been with this company for a while. I need to know the ins and outs of everything. And so that's okay. But yeah, but again, take it with, the spirit in which a lot of it is given.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One of the things that you kind of reminded me of when you were speaking earlier about being an only child was the
Mhm,
the idea that some of our mindset gets created when we're young.
mhm,
And I think that's really true.
mhm,
But it doesn't mean that it's set, right? And that's one of the important pieces about like
mhm,
mindset coaching is most of us, I would argue, have some kind of unhelpful mindset, some way of interpreting information that we acquire during childhood.
mhm.
And this is no disrespect to parents, but it's
Right.
like a lot of times there's
Mhm,
just stuff that happens
mhm,
in families. You're in a certain role
mhm,
within your family. Your parents are the way that they are.
mhm.
Other people are the way that they
Well,
are.
and a lot
That's
of times they're saying things to protect you, to be
right.
helpful, telling you don't touch that, that's hot, is very different from little girls shouldn't do that. But they're
Right.
trying to protect you from being hurt.
Right. Exactly. Right there. So, and one of the things that like I always think is again, it's like don't be bitter about whatever
Mhm,
stuff you're carrying with you from
mhm.
childhood. Think about how it's influenced you, and
Right.
sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. If
Mhm,
it's not useful, then you put in the work to try to
mhm,
change it. Because if you don't like it about yourself, you have the
mhm,
choice to either stay like that or to put in some effort
mhm,
and work to try to make
mhm.
some changes.
Right. And again, a lot of times we can't come to those realizations ourselves.
Right.
We can't. And that's where having a coach is, going to and it's sometimes it's painful. I'm guessing you see a lot of tears.
Yes.
And both positive and negative, right? When somebody has that, oh my gosh, breakthrough and they get emotional, but yeah, sometimes when we're kind of picking at those old sores, that hurts.
Yeah. And I think the other big valuable piece about coaching is a coach holds you accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say like, I think sometimes people are like put off by that idea of
Mm-hmm.
being held accountable. It's so important because it's so easy to say that you're going to do something and not do
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're working with somebody who
Mm-hmm.
in a kind, caring, supportive
Mm-hmm.
space just keeps you
Mm-hmm.
accountable to what you said you were going to do, or
Mm-hmm.
keeps getting you closer to being
Mm-hmm.
able to get the self insight that
Mm-hmm.
you need, then you're going to be in a much
Mm-hmm.
better position than if you try to do it on your own.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how many people have like a bunch of self-help books, or even I think about it with like
Oh,
cooking.
there's, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but like people have all these like amazing cookbooks. How many of the recipes have you actually tried?
How
Very,
many
very
of us have
few.
even opened the
Exactly.
amazing
Right.
cookbooks?
Right, because left to your own devices,
Mm-hmm.
you're typically going to take the path of least resistance.
Mm-hmm.
So having somebody there to be supportive is a really big,
Mm-hmm.
important part of
Mm-hmm.
you being able to put
Right.
in the effort to make the
Mm-hmm.
changes.
Right. Well, oh my gosh, Rebekah, this has been so much fun. And I would love to continue this discussion. But tell us more about Vent to Reinvent. How do they find you, and what are the services that you provide?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Deb. I agree we could talk forever, but we probably should cut it short so people can get back to doing something else. But so you can find me online at vent2reinvent.com. It has information about the basics of coaching, a little bit more with some links to my blogs that I do and some of the different talks that I've given. You could get a better feel for kind of like who I am. So the services that I offer is mindset coaching with the goal towards self optimization. So I work with clients with all different types of backgrounds and all different types of issues. It's more about figuring out, or you have the sense that in your life there's something that you want to get more of, and I work with clients to look at how the way that they're interpreting the situation, the way that they're viewing themselves, and the actions that they're engaging in might potentially be holding them back. And
Mm-hmm.
so we work to make changes. I have a bunch of different coaching packages. Some of them are short, some of them are longer, it just kind of depends.
Mm-hmm.
And then on my website, there's a link, a Calendly link. You can sign up for
Mm-hmm.
a free consultation just to kind of chat and see if the
Okay.
services are right for you.
In person, or do you work remotely?
Mostly remotely. I'm in
Okay.
San Diego, so if somebody's in
Mm-hmm.
San Diego, I can meet with them in person, but
Mm-hmm.
most of my clients are remote.
Mm-hmm. Gotta love technology, right?
I know, it's so nice.
I love it. Well, this really has been such a great discussion. You've got great resources on your website. So I hope that people look those through. And, you can need a coach at any point in time, folks. I mean, that's the other thing. Maybe you're just starting out in your career and you're trying to figure out, is this the way I want to be going? Maybe you've been doing it for 30, 40 years and you're thinking, what's next? My husband is getting ready to retire. He needs a coach because he's like,
It's a hard
right.
transition. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
a really hard
Right.
transition.
Right. And so you're never too young or too old or at any point in your career to have a coach. So I hope that people will look at the resources and information that you have.
Absolutely. Thank you, Deb.
Well, this has been such a great discussion. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
I think just from the position of mindset, something that I think is a really important thing to keep in mind always is that nothing of value in life comes without effort. And so you need to put yourself in a position to know that and act on it. And one of the things that helps you to keep putting in the effort when things get hard is surrounding yourself with a good supportive network.
I love it. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I have been speaking with Dr. Rebekah Wanic of Vent to Reinvent. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.